LA Knight is on a mission to stop Seth Rollins and his fellow Paul Heyman guys since Rollins stole the Money in the Bank briefcase from under his nose. But while looking to cut the head off the snake, it's the snakes who arrive. While the referee is distracted, Breakker drills him off the apron with a spear and tosses him back in the ring. Once again, it's LA Knight who falls short. Knight is fuming. He runs down everyone in the group and he says that regardless of brands, there will be warfare. And he says there's a long line of people wanting to knock Heyman and his men off their perch. But that's when Heyman approaches and he says, "You'll need one hell of an army." But then Knight stares at Heyman and says, "Maybe I'm already building one." But that's when we see Bronson Reed come from the crowd. However, he looks behind him because now he doesn't know where Bron Breakker is. But then we find out because Breakker is down backstage and it's very clear that LA Knight certainly isn't going to do this on his own. But who was it? Well, we don't see just yet, but what we do see is Heyman recommend to Bronson Reed that they leave the situation because Knight is now armed with a chair and ready to use it. However, as the dust settles, Knight goes looking for SmackDown GM Nick Aldis, who happens to be talking to Grayson Waller. Listen, all I'm saying, lad, is I think I'm capable of doing big things on my own. But then Knight cuts him off and he says, "Yeah, you're absolutely capable of something, Waller. You're capable of getting the hell out of here." Waller gets in Knight's face, but he ultimately leaves. And then Knight follows Aldis to his office in another part of the building. And we don't get to hear what they say. But that will become apparent very quickly as LA Knight storms into Raw just days later on a mission. But once again, he's pulled up by Grayson Waller who says, "Hey Knight, you flog. What are you doing here? You got another goon to come and cheap shot someone backstage, huh? Coward." But Knight bites right back and says, "You know, I was going to ask you the same thing on SmackDown. Did you know he was there and he was talking to Nick Aldis, Austin? I guess not. But you know what? I have a theory. You've always been better off without this clown. And you'd be better off aiming a little higher in life. But this clown asked me why I'm here. Well, get this. I spoke to Nick Aldis and I said I had some business to take care of on Raw. And when I asked if I could get a trade, he said, so I'm here for Rollins and his goon squad. But now, it seems like I'm here to fight you as well." Waller puts his foot in his mouth again, but it's Knight's foot he has to worry about as the two fight later in the show. And Theory watches on. But this is Waller's issue, because Theory just watches. And the Aussie icon gets put down by the megastar, and it starts an argument at ringside between the two. And the crowd gets behind Theory. They want to see him clock Waller. They desperately want to see Theory leave him behind. But it's Knight that leaves them behind to settle it because he has business to take care of later in the show when Reed, Breakker and Rollins take on Penta, Zayn and Jey Uso. But once again, as promised, he's not gonna do it alone because as the multi-man cluster comes towards the end, Knight sees his opportunity because Penta is down, Jey is down and Sammy is surrounded. But then Knight hits the ring and he manages to get both Breakker and Reed out of it. And he fights them off desperately at ringside, only to leave Sammy vulnerable and Seth stalking him. Knight fought the cavalry, and it's the giant Omos! Seth was his last singles opponent before he left. He tries to get away, but then CM Punk comes out of nowhere and blows the roof off and blows through Rollins as well. All while Omos tears the rest of the place apart, and the match just gets thrown out. The Giant is batting everyone away and clearing the rest of the Heyman guys out to a massive pop. And then, with the arena at a fever pitch, they hear Knight defiantly say, "You wanted a war? You got a war. And guess what? I'm bringing an army." Knight has the ultimate backup with the return of Omos. But why? Well, Knight explains, but also has a warning. So they wanted an army, I bought an Omos. But don't get it twisted. As I said, there's a long line of people who want to knock you all off your perch. And as much as Omos is enough of a one-man army, there is more. But stopping Seth Rollins ain't all I want. Nah. I want what I've always wanted, and that's the World Championship. So Gunther, keep that thing nice and shined up. Because once my insurance policy and I take care of Reed and Breaker at SummerSlam, that title is mine. Because Goldberg might be retired, but I'm next. The towering presence of Omos is an intimidating force, and he shows exactly why Knight handpicked him. And if this is an insight into the kind of person Knight will choose for his third, then the roster needs to be on notice. But it doesn't take away from the dangers of facing the Rabid Dog and the Colossus in Breaker and Reed. And they get an opportunity to put Knight away. But this is where the insurance policy kicks in, and he blasts Breaker out of the way and sends him flying. But Reed still sets himself. He leaps off, only to be caught by the Giant. And it brings the crowd to its feet. Omos then slams the big man on the canvas, which gives Knight the chance now to stalk him and nail a BFT to get the first win for this new team. And it sends a direct message to Heyman and Rollins. But speaking of Rollins, he sees an opportunity later in the night for a heist. Roman Reigns negates the need for Knight and Omos to even get involved. But is he the third man? Well, according to LA Knight, on the following Raw, nah. I hear a lot of people saying that Roman is part of this, and I assure you, his ass isn't. The megastar never forgets, and instead of working with him, I'm going to send a message to him. I know you're filming a movie right now and you won't be back for a little while, so I respect the pettiness of making sure Seth Rollins doesn't win that title. That's something we agree on. But just know this, Roman Reigns, when you get back, stay out of my way. Because as promised, we will take care of Seth's goons. But for now, it's on to... Can we please stop all of this delusion, LA? You know exactly what your place is here. You're the almost guy. You're the one they want, but not the one WWE wants. And look, I'll hand it to you. You're persistent. You're a hard worker, and that's great. There is a place for you here. But you're exactly where you should be. And so is Omos. You're just putting a fresh coat of paint on something that no one has ever cared about. Let's face it, boys. None of this matters. Because I have the briefcase. And not only that, you're not even going to make it to Clash in Paris. Breaker and Reed infiltrate the ring again, and they spear Knight in half, which takes him out of commission. Gunther slips out very cleverly, and then they can focus all their attention on Omos as Breaker gets Omos down into position for a tsunami. However, as he does, it's Penta who arrives, and he pushes Reed off the top rope, and they fight off through the crowd. And it has everyone wondering, is Penta the man that is the final member of the group? Well, we can't be sure. But what we can be sure of is the vitriol in Seth Rollins as he takes the chance to get a cheap shot on Knight and stomps his head into the ground. And it reinforces that while he holds the case, Knight never hold the gold. But the curiosity around who Knight is handpicking as his third ramps up, because while Omos is planning with him backstage, they keep their cards close to their chest. But it's as they're having this discussion that another potential member is in trouble, because Sami Zayn is now in the grips of the Heyman guys, and they also have wiped out Penta. They just won't stop until every threat is gone. But as Omos and Knight arrive and they manage to run them off, it seems to increase the line that Knight is talking about. But it's a line that Knight wants to skip the week after when he gets a chance in a World Championship #1 contenders fatal 4-way. The catch though is Braun Breaker is in the match, which means the Heyman guys will almost certainly be lurking, not only to help him, but to stop Knight. But he's not the only one in this match. AJ Styles is also vying for the spot. He's keen to get back to France, where he was ever so close to winning a world title in the past. And it completes the 4 with Rusev, who has been on a winning streak in the lead-up. And in the finish of the match, it gets massively chaotic, and the line of people wanting to get at Seth Rollins and potentially join Knight's group gets even longer. Because while Rusev and Knight are preoccupied with each other on the outside, Styles avoids an apron spear by Breaker and it sends him crashing to the floor. But it also gives him a chance to target him with a phenomenal forearm from the ring to the floor. And he quickly picks him up, throws him back in the ring, and he's going to try and finish him off. But as he slides in, bang! He gets a stomp, and Rollins is going to try and hand the win to Breaker. But as he tries to go and grab him, he gets dropped with a BFT. Breaker then stumbles to his feet, and just like that, Knight wins the shot at Gunther at Clash in Paris. But as we mentioned, the line of potential help for Knight only grows, as AJ Styles now seethes at being cost the chance by Rollins, and he challenges him to a one-on-one match in Paris as well. And on the eve of the show, we have a contract signing between Gunther and Knight, where once again, Gunther is running him down. He's diminishing everything he's ever done, and he's telling him that he will never amount to what he thinks he deserves because he's just not World Championship material. But Knight rebuffs the only way he knows how. You know what, Gunther? I've heard that my entire life. Not good enough. Not main event enough, not championship material. Hell, if I had $1 for every time someone like you told me what I ain't, I wouldn't need to be in this ring right now. But I am. Yeah, and look at you. Standing there with your chest puffed out, talking about legacy, about dominance, about how you belong at the top. But there's a difference between you and I, champ. You were handed belief. I had to fight for it. You walked into this company and they said, he's a machine, he's a monster, let's push him to the moon. Me? I had to crawl out the dirt just to get on TV. I had to make every word, every moment, every damn yeah matter. They told me I was too old, too loud, and too late. But look around now, Gunther. Who's watching? This whole arena, the millions around the world, they're watching. But they're not watching because I was handed anything. They're watching because I took every opportunity and I made it mine. I carved my name into this business with broken knuckles and a silver tongue, and now I'm standing in front of the so-called most dominant champion in WWE, and I ain't blinking. You don't think I'm world title material, that's fine. You don't gotta see it. You just gotta feel it. And at Clash of Paris, when I crack your jaw and I take that title, you'll feel every ounce of everything I've ever been through. Every door slammed in my face. Every match I wasn't supposed to win. Every moment the world counted me out until they had no choice but to count me in. Because it ain't just a catchphrase. It ain't just hype. I'm the future world champion, and that ain't an insult. That's a fact of life. Rollins is staying true to his word. He's not going to make anything easy for Knight, but it's his insurance policy at Omos that takes the fight. But Knight can't because Gunther stops him, and now they're brawling. Omos is such a force, but there's only so much you can do against 3, especially considering they already got to the line that's waiting for Rollins, because we see Penta down and also AJ Styles. But Zayn can't help for another reason. He's embroiled in a fight with Karrion Kross, seemingly taking him out of the equation. And it's now more than ever that everyone is desperate to know just who could even the score. And we find out at Clash in Paris. And we see Omos make his full in-ring return against Bronson Reed, and it goes about how you would expect. But the pain for the Heyman guys ends there when Seth Rollins gets a huge win by putting AJ Styles down. Only it's shrouded in controversy after Rollins clearly cheated to get it done. But it's also not done for Styles with a concussion. But that isn't the only thing that needs to be done for the show, because Knight is looking to go to the next level, but he will almost certainly need help to keep the wolves from the door. Knight comes out and attempts to do it alone. He leaves Omos backstage, who is 100% on guard and ready for anything. And as he does with everyone, Gunther tests Knight in every single aspect. Physically, mentally, absolutely every inch of it's covered. But just like he does with everyone, Knight passes every test thrown at him. And in the dying stages, it gets desperate. Neither man has anything left, and Knight throws one last Hail Mary. And it leaves both men vulnerable. Seth Rollins cashes in, and now the match is a triple threat. He stomps Knight, he makes the cover. 1, 2, no! Gunther breaks it up, but now Seth stomps him, and he makes the cover as well. 1, 2, no! Gunther manages to kick out, and now Seth is frustrated. He's pulling his hair out, and he calls on the backup. And backup does arrive, but so does LA Knight's insurance policy, and he handles them as well as he can. But there's only so much he can do with the outnumber. But it doesn't mean someone else can't be the difference. Theory is the third man, a man who lost his cash-in to Seth Rollins. And he is the man that costs Seth his. The place is shaking. LA Knight does it. He climbs the mountain, and he brings two men with him who stopped waiting and started taking. And it helps the megastar become the main event, with everybody saying,